first person I'm going to be handing over to is Dr. Mary Fraser, who's the Head of Skills and Talent in Sustainable Aquaculture Innovation Centre.
Okay, thank you, Janie. Thank you very much, and thank you for asking me to come along. So if we move the slide on. Yep, so we're SAKE, and as you said, we're the Sustainable Aquaculture Innovation Centre. We're based at Stirling University. So if we move on to the first slide. So my colleagues that are speaking after me will tell you much more about aquaculture, but the thing I've noticed going around schools and working with various young people is that they don't always know what aquaculture is, and I knew very little about aquaculture before joining SAKE. So aquaculture is basically farming at sea. So that can be salmon farming, other finfish farming, shellfish farming, or seaweed. So if we move on to the next slide. So aquaculture is big business in Scotland. So these figures are a little bit out of date now, but as you can see from that, there is a lot of salmon produced in Scotland and it's worth a lot to the economy. And alongside that, we've got shellfish, we've got seaweed production. Seaweed is used in all sorts of things. I'll mention a little bit later about the role of seaweed in climate change, but it's used obviously for food, but it's also used in the beauty industry, which I had absolutely no idea about. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So thinking about routes into aquaculture, there are lots of different routes in, which again, my colleagues will go into a little bit more detail. I'm just sort of going to give you a broad overview from SAKE's perspective and the sort of questions I get asked when I'm going around career fairs. So there are people working in the sector who went in straight from school. We've got some videos which I'll tell you about later, and one of the guys in the videos went straight in from school and has worked his way up and he's now a farm manager. So you don't need to go to college and have qualifications to come in. You can, however, do that, and that will take down different routes. So there's also apprenticeships. People come into the sector with degrees. Now they can be degrees in aquaculture, but they could also be degrees in other subjects. So it could be absolutely any subject at all, and then come in on a graduate scheme and get trained on the job and what they have to do. We have master's students and we have PhD students that are coming into the sector as well. Can we have the next slide, please? Brilliant, thank you. So when we talk about aquaculture, most people think of fish farming. Think, oh, you're out on a farm, it's wet, it's cold, you might smell a fish. But actually, it's a huge sector and there are so many different jobs. And I'll come back to the bit about the farm as well and why they don't smell a fish as well later. So many different careers there. These are just a few of them. So you've got to think, how do you get, if I'm going to talk salmon farming, how do you get a salmon from the west coast of Scotland onto the shelves in Glasgow or Edinburgh? And there's so many steps in between that. So there's logistics, there's the business side of things, there are people out there monitoring the environment, there are people monitoring the health of the animals, producing the food for the animals. Innovation, engineering is a huge component of this, molecular biology, people that create vaccines for the animals. There are so many different aspects to all of this that aquaculture is just one word, doesn't really do it that much justice. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So I wanted to post this. We do a lot of work with Land Trust Scotland and they have some fabulous resources to share with schools, with just school children. So the link is there. The Aquaculture Careers Map will take you through some of those careers and show you the career path that could be followed by the different pupils. With the next slide, please. Brilliant. So again, this is Land Trust Scotland, and this is just a little bit more detail showing the type of qualifications that people can study and the pathways that people can then follow. So if you start with one qualification, you could go on and study another qualification and so on, and take you down a specific route and take you out the different levels as well. So there are lots of different options. There's lots of different ways in, lots of different things you can do once you're working in the sector. And you might start off on one job and then move into a completely different department within the company as well. So there's lots of different options out there. But all of this is on the Lancia website, and loads of brilliant resources on there. So it's well worth having a look at that and working through the resources there. With the next slide. So apprenticeships are certainly one of the major routes into the sector, and I was speaking to somebody this morning who was telling me that the number of apprenticeships in aquaculture has actually gone up in recent years, and that's absolutely fantastic. There are different levels of apprenticeships, and at the moment the apprenticeships are undergoing a review. So I don't know yet what it's going to look like when the new apprenticeship structure comes out, but that's what we have at the moment. So there are different levels, and you can work through all of that, or people can just go straight in at a specific level depending on what previous qualifications they've got. So the beauty of the apprenticeships is that you're actually working on the job, you're getting paid, and you're getting the practical experience at the same time. And you can come out with qualifications that are equivalent to being a full-time student at university or college. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So the career videos are resources. These are based on the SAKE YouTube channel. So we created these between SAKE, Lancia Scotland and WISA, which is Women in Scottish Aquaculture. And we've got a whole bank of different career films there, which we would like to see them getting used. So they're on the YouTube channel, so people can just go and look at them. But if any teachers want to actually have a download of these to use in class perhaps, then just let us know, send me an email and we can send that out to you. Because we want these videos out there, we want young people seeing these videos. So they take you through a whole variety of different careers, chatting to people about how they got there and what route that they took. So they are well worth a look to give you a feel for the different types of jobs that are in the sector and how you can end up working in the sector as well. And they're good for parents as well. So parents' evenings as well. These would be really nice resources for the parents to see the type of careers that are available to people in the sector. Go to the next slide, please. So yeah, this was me thinking about the future. I'm nearly finished, so I'll shush in a minute. So thinking about the future of aquaculture, things that I've learned since I've been working in the sector, to me, food production, salmon is a wonderful food source. It has a low carbon footprint. Really producing that going forward, it will advance. The way it's produced is going to change. The technology that's used is going to change. But there are huge amounts of technology in salmon farming. So I've got a picture of a camera there. So I went out on a visit to a site and the guy was sitting in the office with a bank of screens in front of him and he's watching the fish. So they're watching the behaviour, they've got sensors monitoring the environment, they're controlling what they're getting fed. The use of technology is amazing and that is only going to improve and get taken forward and get bigger with everything that they do with food production. Thinking about climate change, seaweed, kelp is one of the best carbon sinks that we have on the planet. So aquaculture is not just fish farming, the seaweed production is in there as well. So how can we make better use of that? What innovation can we apply going forward? Data analysis is huge in all aspects of aquaculture. There's huge amounts of data from all the monitoring that goes on, predicting what's going to happen, weather can have such an impact on aquaculture. So we need people who are good with numbers and good at data analysis. And then the last couple of things I wanted to mention there are to do with food production. So the novel proteins side of things, producing the food for the fish to eat, they're now looking at insect production, so growing insects to produce that and give that as a food source to the salmon, for example. But also React First there is a carbon recycling project that takes carbon dioxide from industry, feeds it to bacteria, and then those bacteria produce protein, and then that protein's fed to the salmon. And that to me is a wonderful way of thinking about climate change, about carbon dioxide. How do we reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere? Well, there's a perfect example. So just a few tiny examples to give you a feel for, where this could go in the future. So don't just think, oh, I'm just feeding fish and I'm just out there in the wet all the time. Anything but that. So I think that's possibly me, if I remember my slides. Oh no, there was one slide left. There was WISA. So WISA, as I mentioned, is Women in Scottish Aquaculture. And we want to promote the women that come and work in the sector. So traditionally wasn't thought of as being for women. It is very much so for women. There's a lot of women working in the sector, and we've got Connie coming up in a second to talk to you. So any girls out there who are considering it, don't be put off by people saying it's not a job for a girl. It very much is. And I think that's me. So
I think we've just got a wee list of some other resources.
Yeah, so we've got the resources there. And again, if anybody needs any information, just send me an email. Look at the SAKE website, just get in touch. That's what we're there for. Okay.
Mark?
That was great, Mary. Good to see you again. I was really fascinated by that novel proteins.
Yeah.
Is that taking place in Scotland? Like whether it's insect farming or
so
a whole different level of creating protein through bacteria?
The insect farming side of things is at Edinburgh. I think that's out at Roslin. The React first one, yes, is based in Scotland and the north of England. So, but the main part of the company is based in Scotland. So yeah. There's a lot of it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Really genuinely fascinating. So that's a whole other webinar for another time.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks very much for that. I was really interested. I was scribbling down lots of notes and things there as well. So I might have a few questions myself later on once I form them a bit more.